A millionaire took his new housekeeper to his company's gala dinner, but what she did shocked everyone. Before the story begins, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story, everyone. William Porter crossed the mansion's living room with irritated steps, his phone buzzing non-stop inside his jacket pocket. Another message from the board. Another demand about tomorrow's gala dinner. Another reminder of the pressure on him to save the company's image, an image he himself had put at risk. He stopped when he saw the new temporary housekeeper cleaning the living room furniture. The woman didn't even notice his presence, too focused on scrubbing an invisible stain on the coffee table. "You," William called sharply. The housekeeper jumped, almost dropping the cleaning bottle. When she turned around, her eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Porter, I didn't know you were home. Do you need something?" "What's your name?" "Daisy. Daisy Stevens, sir." William stared at her for a moment. Out of options, out of time, and out of patience, an absurd idea came to his mind. He was desperate, and desperate people made questionable decisions. "How much do you make per day?" Daisy frowned, clearly confused. $120. "Why?" "I need a date for my company's gala dinner tomorrow night." William crossed his arms, his tone cold and direct. "I'm willing to pay you $4,000 for a few hours of your time." The silence that followed was deafening. Daisy blinked several times, as if trying to process whether she had heard him correctly. "Sorry, did you say $4,000? "Exactly, for you to come with me to the gala dinner." William checked his watch impatiently. "It's an important corporate event. I need to appear with someone by my side. You just need to wear something elegant, sit at the table, smile when needed, and keep quiet. No opinions, no unnecessary conversations, just be presentable and discreet." Daisy let out an incredulous laugh. "You're joking, right?" "I don't joke about money." William kept a straight face. "It's a simple business deal. You pretend to be my companion for a few hours, I pay you well for it, and everyone wins. You want to use me as a decorative accessory?" Daisy dropped the cleaning cloth on the table, her voice filled with irritation. "Like I'm just a piece of furniture that matches the room?" "If you want to put it that way, yes," William said without a hint of embarrassment, "but a piece of furniture that'll walk away with $4,000 in her pocket." Daisy opened her mouth to reply, probably something not very polite, but hesitated. William noticed the subtle change in her expression. He saw when the indignation began to battle against financial reality. He knew that inner conflict well. It was the same one he saw in tough negotiations when pride clashed with necessity. "This is completely ridiculous and disrespectful," Daisy said, though her voice had lost some of its firmness. $5,000, William raised the offer, sensing an opening. "My final proposal. Take it or leave it." Daisy took a deep breath. Her eyes wandered around the luxurious room, then returned to William with a mix of defiance and resignation. "I'll do it," she said finally, lifting her chin. "But let's be clear. It's not because I admire you or think this is right. It's because $5,000 makes a difference in the life of someone who actually has to work to survive. And because I'm curious to see up close how this world of entitled, clueless people really works." William arched an eyebrow. "Careful with that sharp tongue. Tomorrow you'll need to keep it in check." "Tomorrow I'll be the silent, smiling companion you want?" Daisy replied with a hint of sarcasm. "Today I'm still the housekeeper who can say what she thinks." "Perfect. Then we have a deal." William took his phone out of his pocket. "I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something elegant, nothing extravagant, just presentable. And remember the rules. Smile, stay quiet, don't ruin my evening." "Your expectations of me are truly inspiring, Mr. Porter," Daisy said with sweet irony. William ignored the remark and turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Oh, and Daisy, don't be late. Punctuality is something I take very seriously." "Don't worry. I won't miss the chance to earn $5,000 just for putting up with the company of an arrogant millionaire for a few hours." William left the room without replying, but a faint, involuntary smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. That housekeeper had courage, he had to admit. Courage or madness. He wasn't sure yet which one. As he headed back to his office, William grabbed his phone and typed a quick message to his assistant. "Problem with the date solved. confirm my attendance at the dinner." Across the room, Daisy stood still for a long moment, staring at the door William had just walked through. Then she looked at the cleaning cloth in her hands, at the vacuum cleaner on the floor, and let out an incredulous laugh. "What did I just agree to?" she murmured to herself. But when she thought about the $5,000, the overdue rent, the unpaid bills, and the opportunities that money could open up, Daisy shook her head and went back to work. Tomorrow would be an interesting day. Very interesting. She just didn't know yet how much that decision would completely change her life. Back in his office, William took calls from shareholders with renewed confidence. The gala dinner was secured. He would show up with a date by his side, give the impression of personal stability the board demanded, and everything would fall back into place. It was a simple, perfect plan. What could possibly go wrong? As he hung up another call, William looked out the window with satisfaction. Tomorrow would be just another corporate event, another night of business and appearances. The housekeeper would play her role as the silent companion. He would impress the shareholders, and by the next morning, everything would be back to normal. Simple, controlled, predictable. He had no idea how wrong he was. The next day, as the sun set over the city, Daisy was in her small apartment, and black, staring at the only somewhat elegant dress she owned. It was simple, black, bought years ago on clearance, but it would have to do. She tried it on in front of the mirror, adjusted her hair in several ways until she found a style that looked somewhat sophisticated, and applied the little makeup she had as carefully as possible. When she was done, Daisy looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. She didn't look like a wealthy socialite, but she didn't look like the housekeeper who cleaned mansions either. She was somewhere in between, presentable, just as William had demanded. "Smile and stay quiet," she repeated to herself, practicing a fake smile in the mirror. "Easy, $5,000. You can do this." But something inside her, a stubborn voice that always got her into trouble, whispered, "Can you really stay quiet?" Daisy pushed the thought aside. Of course she could. It was just one night. Just a few hours of pretending. Then she'd go back to her normal life with $5,000 more in her account. No complications, no surprises. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Daisy opened the door and found William standing in the hallway, impeccable in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than all the furniture in her apartment combined. He looked her up and down with that critical gaze that was already becoming annoyingly familiar. "Punctual, that's good," was all he said before turning around and walking toward the elevator. "Good evening to you too. What a joy to see you," Daisy muttered under her breath, grabbing her small purse and closing the door behind her. The ride to the event was filled with uncomfortable silence. William drove his luxury car with his usual serious expression, checking his phone at every red light. Daisy looked out the window, watching the city go by, wondering for the 1,000th time if she had lost her mind agreeing to this crazy proposal. "Remember the rules." William finally broke the silence as they approached the 5-star hotel where the dinner was being held. "Smile, stay by my side, and most importantly, don't say anything. Absolutely nothing. Let me handle all conversations." "Yes, sir. I'll be a lovely decorative vase," Daisy replied with exaggerated sweetness. William shot her a warning look but didn't answer. The ballroom was stunning. Huge chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Tables decorated with expensive floral arrangements filled the space, and elegantly dressed people moved around with champagne glasses in hand. Daisy felt completely out of place, but kept her posture straight and a polite smile on her face. William barely looked at her as they entered, simply offering his arm in a mechanical gesture. They went straight to the main table, where several men in suits and women wearing sparkling jewelry were already seated. "William, glad you made it," an older man with gray hair greeted warmly. "And who is the charming lady with you?" "This is Daisy," William replied vaguely, pulling out a chair for her without even meeting her eyes. "She's accompanying me tonight." Daisy immediately noticed how deliberately he avoided giving any details about her. No last name, no context. It was as if she were a temporary object, a borrowed accessory brought along for a few hours. She sat beside William and kept her polite smile as the others at the table greeted her with superficial courtesy. She could feel their curious eyes, their silent evaluation. It was obvious she didn't belong there. Her dress was too simple, her purse had no designer label, and she definitely didn't have that air of bored confidence the other women seemed to wear naturally. Dinner began with endless speeches about market growth, business expansion, and quarterly profits. Daisy ate quietly, listening to the conversations around her. It was both fascinating and disturbing. These people talked about employee layoffs as if they were discussing the dinner menu. Numbers, always numbers, never people. "We need to increase our profit margin by at least 20% next quarter," said a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, "even if it means downsizing in a few departments." "Employees are replaceable resources," another executive agreed, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "What matters is keeping shareholders happy." Daisy gripped her fork tighter than necessary. Replaceable resources. As if the people who worked late, who supported families, who gave everything to that company were just lines on a spreadsheet. William, beside her, stayed calm and composed, nodding in agreement with the comments. Not once did he seem bothered by the coldness in the room. Then, an elegant older man sitting across from them turned to Daisy with a condescending smile. "And you, my dear?" he asked, his tone making it clear he expected little or nothing interesting in return. "What do you think of all these corporate topics? It must be rather boring for someone outside the business world." Daisy felt every gaze shift toward her. William stiffened beside her, and she could almost hear his thoughts. "Smile. Stay quiet. Don't ruin this." She opened her mouth to give a polite, empty answer, just as she had promised. But the words that came out were completely different. "Actually, Mr. Moretti," she read the name on the card in front of him, "I find it fascinating how a company can show such impressive numbers on its reports and yet lose the only resource that truly matters: engaged and motivated people." The silence that followed was absolute. William froze, his wine glass suspended in midair. The others at the table blinked, surprised, as if a decorative vase had just given a lecture on quantum physics. Mr. Moretti, however, leaned forward with genuine interest. "Go on. I'm curious." Daisy could feel William's furious stare burning the side of her face, but once she had started, she couldn't stop. Years of frustration, of studying hard and never getting a chance to use that knowledge, of cleaning offices while hearing incompetent executives make terrible decisions. All of it spilled out. "Look, I understand that numbers are important," she continued, keeping her tone respectful but firm. "But a company that only focuses on short-term profit and treats employees like disposable parts is digging its own grave. Without a healthy work environment, without investing in team development, without real social responsibility, even the best talents eventually leave. And then it doesn't matter how much money you have to hire replacements, the company's reputation will already be damaged." "Interesting," Moretti murmured, completely absorbed. "And where does that knowledge come from? What field do you work in?" Daisy hesitated for a second, but decided she'd already broken all the rules anyway. "Right now, I work as a housekeeper, Mr. Moretti, but I graduated in business administration 2 years ago. I just never got a real opportunity to use my degree because no one hires people without experience. It's a never-ending circle." The bomb had been dropped. Daisy could feel the tension radiating from William like waves of heat. He had brought a housekeeper to the most important dinner of the year, and now everyone knew it. But Moretti didn't seem embarrassed. On the contrary, his eyes shone with genuine curiosity. "A housekeeper with a degree in business administration. What a waste of talent. Please continue. You mentioned work environment. What specifically would you change in a company like ours?" And so, to William's absolute horror, and the growing fascination of everyone else at the table, Daisy began to talk about people management, about the importance of integration programs, about how small investments in employee well-being could bring huge returns in productivity and loyalty to the brand. She mentioned studies, cited success stories, talked about market trends and the importance of adapting to new generations of workers. Every word came out with the passion of someone who studied the subject out of love, not just obligation. William sat frozen beside her, torn between anger at having his orders completely ignored and shock at discovering that the housekeeper he'd hired as a decorative accessory was, In fact, more qualified than half the executives at that table. Extraordinary, Moretti finally said, leaning back in his chair with a thoughtful smile. Miss Daisy, what a tragedy that a mind like yours is being wasted cleaning houses. This is exactly the kind of fresh perspective we need in this company. Daisy blinked in surprise. Sir? Come see me Monday morning, Moretti said, handing her a business card. I have an opening in the Human Resources Department. Entry level, of course, but with real potential for growth for someone who shows competence. And something tells me you will. The world seemed to stop for a moment. Daisy looked at the card in her hand as if it were a winning lottery ticket. A real opportunity. After all this time, someone was finally giving her a chance. I accept. Thank you very much, Mr. Moretti, she stammered, her voice full of emotion. William, beside her, looked like a man who had just witnessed a car crash in slow motion. His disposable companion had just landed a job in his own company. The night had just become much more complicated. The rest of the dinner was a strange mix of lively conversation and icy silence, coming specifically from the chair next to Daisy. William didn't say a single word to her for the rest of the evening, limiting himself to answering shareholders' questions with short, tense replies. Daisy, on the other hand, was bombarded with questions. Moretti seemed genuinely fascinated, asking for her opinion on different aspects of business management. Other executives joined the discussion, some out of curiosity, others clearly skeptical that a housekeeper could actually know anything about administration. So you really believe that investing in wellness programs increases productivity? A woman with glasses asked, her tone carrying a hint of doubt. It's not about believing, it's a proven fact, Daisy replied, catching the rhythm of the conversation. Happy employees take fewer sick days, produce more, and stay longer with the company. That reduces recruitment and training costs. It's basic math, only with people involved. The woman looked impressed. William looked like he was about to have a breakdown. When the dinner finally ended, William practically dragged Daisy out of the ballroom. He didn't say a word until they reached the parking lot, where he finally exploded. You had one simple instruction, he said through clenched teeth, opening the car door harder than necessary. One simple instruction: stay quiet. Technically, you also told me to smile, and I smiled a lot, Daisy replied, getting into the car with an innocent look. So I met at least 50% of the expectations. That's not a failure. This isn't funny, Daisy. William started the car sharply. You embarrassed me in front of the company's most important shareholders. Oh yes, what a terrible embarrassment, to have someone intelligent and relevant sitting next to you. Daisy crossed her arms. Much better if I just sat there looking like a well-dressed mannequin. That would have made a great impression. William clenched his jaw, clearly making an almost superhuman effort not to say something he'd regret later. The ride back was even quieter than before, but this time the silence was filled with tension. When they stopped in front of Daisy's building, she was about to get out when William finally spoke. On Monday, you won't show up. Daisy slowly turned to face him. What? You're not taking that job, William said, staring straight ahead. I'll double tonight's payment. $10,000 for you to forget this whole thing and move on with your life. For a moment, Daisy just stared at him in disbelief. Then she started to laugh, a genuine laugh that began softly and grew until it filled the entire car. You can't be serious, she managed to say between laughs. Do you really think you can just buy my silence and make me give up a real career opportunity? 15,000? William raised the offer, still not looking at her. You didn't understand anything, did you? Daisy stopped laughing, her voice now serious. This isn't about money, William. It's about finally having the chance to use everything I studied to prove that I'm capable, to do something that really matters. You could offer $1 million and the answer would still be no. You'll regret this, William said coldly. Working with me won't be easy. I can make your life very difficult in that company. Threats now? Daisy opened the car door. How classy. Thank you for confirming I made the right choice. And for the record, you can keep your $15,000. I'll earn my money with honest work, not by taking bribes from a grumpy millionaire. She got out of the car and slammed the door shut with satisfying force. When she was halfway to the building's entrance, she turned and shouted, Oh, and the 5,000 from the original deal? I still expect that on Monday. William sped away, leaving Daisy standing on the sidewalk with a triumphant smile on her face. The next morning, Daisy woke up still processing everything that had happened. She picked up Moretti's business card from her nightstand and stared at it for a long moment. It was real. It was truly real. She spent the weekend caught between excitement and nervousness. She bought 2 office outfits with what little money she had saved, researched everything she could about Porter Enterprises online, and rehearsed in her mind how her first day would go. Monday came far too quickly. Daisy stood in front of the imposing Porter Enterprises building at 8 a.m., wearing simple black pants, a white shirt, and a blazer she'd found on clearance. Nothing fancy, but professional. The receptionist directed her to the Human Resources Department, where she was greeted by a woman named Jennifer, who would be her direct supervisor. "Mr. Moretti told me about you," Jennifer said with a warm smile. "He said you have some very interesting ideas about people management. I'm looking forward to working with you." Daisy was introduced to the team, given her employee badge, and shown to a small but cozy cubicle. Everything felt like a dream, a very real and slightly terrifying dream. She was organizing her things on the desk when she heard a familiar, unfriendly voice behind her. "I see you actually decided to show up." Daisy turned and found William standing there, arms crossed, wearing that same look of disapproval she knew so well. "Good morning to you too, boss," she replied with exaggerated sweetness. "Or should I say former boss? I'm not sure how the hierarchy works now that I'm not your housekeeper anymore." "You report to Moretti, and he reports to me," William said curtly. "So technically, I'm still your boss. And let me make this clear, I won't make things easy for you. If you want to prove you deserve to be here, you'll have to work twice as hard as anyone else." "Good, because I was actually worried you'd treat me differently." Daisy rolled her eyes. "Relax, William. I don't need your favors. I just need you to stay out of my way." "Oh, I'll be keeping a very close eye on you," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Every mistake, every slip, every report turned in a minute late, I'll see it all." "Great. Then you'll have plenty of free time, because I don't plan on making mistakes," Daisy said, settling into her new swivel chair with satisfaction. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have real work to do, unlike some people who apparently have time to waste threatening new employees." William opened his mouth to reply, but Jennifer appeared just then with a stack of documents. "Daisy, I need you to review these organizational climate reports and give me your feedback by the end of the day. Mr. Porter, can I help you with something?" William gave Daisy one last heavy look before turning away. "No, I'm done here." Once he left, Jennifer leaned closer and whispered, "Is he always that grumpy, or do you have a special talent for annoying him?" "I think it's a little of both," Daisy admitted with a smile. "But considering that until last week I was cleaning his mansion, I think he's still processing it." Jennifer's eyes widened. "You were his housekeeper? Seriously?" "Was," Daisy said, picking up the first report from the pile. "And now I'm the employee he loves to hate the most. But that's fine. Let him sulk in his corner. I've got a career to build." And as she dove into the documents, Daisy couldn't help but smile. Her new life had officially begun, and it looked like it was going to be far more interesting than she ever imagined. Daisy's first few weeks at Porter Enterprises were a roller coaster of emotions and learning. She threw herself into every task, analyzing reports, attending meetings, and absorbing information like a sponge. Jennifer was impressed by how quickly she understood the company's internal processes. "Are you sure you've never worked in a corporate environment before?" Jennifer asked one afternoon, reviewing a report Daisy had prepared. "Because this is flawless, better than what some of our senior analysts deliver. Let's just say I had plenty of time to study theory while cleaning offices," Daisy replied with a smile. Nothing like vacuuming floors while listening to executives argue about strategy to learn hands-on. What she didn't mention was that William made a point of showing up in the Human Resources Department at least 3 times a week, always with some corporate excuse, but clearly keeping an eye on her every move. And Daisy, being Daisy, never missed a chance to push his buttons. "Mr. Porter, what a surprise seeing you here for the 3rd time today," she said during one of his visits, without even looking up from the spreadsheet she was reviewing. "I'm starting to think you're monitoring my work, or maybe you just missed the days when I cleaned your house." William shot her a cold glare. "I'm simply making sure the company's standards are upheld in all departments." "Of course, and by pure coincidence, the department that needs that assurance most just happens to be the one I work in." Daisy finally looked at him with a smile that was far too innocent to be real. Such admirable dedication. Jennifer, watching the exchange from her desk, tried to hide a laugh behind her hand. But the real test came when Daisy was called to her first major strategic meeting. It was a discussion about restructuring several divisions, and she would be representing the HR department. It was that since Jennifer was away on a business trip. "Just observe and take notes," Jennifer had told her before leaving. "You're still learning. You don't have to speak unless you feel comfortable." Daisy walked into the conference room and immediately felt the weight of all the stares. Experienced executives, department directors, and at the head of the table, William, with that expression she already knew well, waiting for her to fail. "Let's begin," William said curtly. "We have a proposal to reduce staff by 15% in the customer service department. The numbers show we can maintain productivity with fewer people if we optimize our processes." The directors began to debate, most agreeing with the cold logic of the numbers. Daisy listened, taking notes, but she felt a growing uneasiness in her chest. "It's a necessary measure," the finance director concluded. "We need to cut costs wherever possible." With all due respect, Daisy's voice broke through the room's consensus, and everyone turned to look at her. She could see William stiffen in his chair. "I think this analysis is incomplete." "Incomplete?" The finance director raised an eyebrow. "In what way, Miss Stevens?" "Daisy Stevens," she said, taking a deep breath and deciding that since she had started, she might as well finish. "The numbers may say productivity stays the same, but they don't account for the impact on workplace morale, the overload on the remaining employees, and most importantly, the quality of customer service. A 15% cut means the remaining staff will work harder, become stressed, and eventually service quality will drop. That directly affects customer satisfaction and, in the long term, the company's revenue." "That's speculation," another director countered. "We don't have concrete data on that." "Actually, we do," Daisy said, opening her laptop and projecting a presentation she had prepared over the past few weeks, anticipating exactly this kind of discussion. "I analyzed the company's data from the last 5 years. Every time there was a significant staff reduction, 3 months later we saw an increase in customer complaints and a drop in employee retention. The costs of recruiting and training replacements ended up being higher than the initial savings. It's all documented here." The silence in the room was thick. The directors looked at the screen, then at Daisy, then at William, who seemed to be fighting an internal battle between wounded pride and reluctant recognition that she was right. "You prepared this by yourself?" Moretti, who was seated at the corner of the table, asked with clear interest. "Yes, sir. Over the past 3 weeks, while getting familiar with the company's processes," Daisy replied, trying to keep her voice steady despite her nerves. "And I have a counter-proposal. Instead of cutting people, how about investing in training and real process optimization? I can present a detailed plan that keeps every job and still increases efficiency by 20%. 20%? The finance director sounded skeptical. "That's very ambitious for someone who's been here less than a month." "Ambitious but possible," Daisy said firmly. "I can prove it with data." William finally spoke, his voice more controlled than Daisy expected. "Show the plan at the next meeting. If it's viable, we'll consider it." It wasn't a warm approval, but it wasn't a rejection either. Daisy accepted it with a nod. When the meeting ended, she was putting away her things when William approached her. Everyone else had already left, leaving just the two of them in the room. "You're wading into deep waters," he said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "Promising results you might not be able to deliver. And you're underestimating what I'm capable of." "Again," Daisy replied, meeting his eyes directly. "Didn't you learn anything from the gala dinner?" "Getting lucky once doesn't mean it will happen again," William said, crossing his arms. "It wasn't luck. It was preparation meeting opportunity," Daisy picked up her purse. "And for your information, I don't promise anything I can't deliver. This plan will work. And when it does, you'll have to swallow your pride and admit you were wrong about me." "Confident," he noted, though there was something different in his eyes now. It wasn't just disdain anymore. It was something more complicated, something Daisy couldn't quite read. "Realistic," she corrected. "There's a difference." Daisy walked toward the door, then stopped and turned. "Oh, and William? I'm still waiting for those $5,000 you promised me for the gala night. Just a reminder." William's expression was priceless, a mix of disbelief and irritation that brought a genuine smile to Daisy's face as she walked out of the room. In the following days, Daisy practically lived in the office, developing her detailed plan. She spoke with employees from different departments, analyzed processes, identified bottlenecks, and created practical solutions. Jennifer helped with valuable insights, and even some colleagues from other teams offered suggestions once they heard about the project. "You're stirring things up around here," Jennifer commented, bringing Daisy a cup of coffee one evening when she was working late. "People are excited." It's been years since anyone proposed something that actually considers employee well-being. "That's because the people making decisions usually have never been on the other side," Daisy said, typing another point into her presentation. "They've never scrubbed floors, never worried about paying rent at the end of the month. It's easy to cut 15% when you don't know the names or stories of the people you're cutting." "William won't like being challenged again," Jennifer warned gently. "William doesn't like anything I do," Daisy shrugged. "But that won't stop me from doing what's right." And as she finalized the last details of her presentation, Daisy couldn't help but smile with determination. The next meeting would be decisive. It was her chance to prove, not just to William, but to everyone, that she wasn't just a lucky housekeeper. She was a competent professional, and she was here to stay. The day of the presentation came faster than Daisy would have liked. She was in the meeting room 15 minutes early, checking for the 10th time that all the slides were in order and the data was up to date. "Breathing helps, you know," Jennifer said as she entered the room with an encouraging smile. "You're going to do great." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one about to tell a room full of executives they've been doing everything wrong," Daisy said, straightening her papers for the 3rd time, more from nerves than necessity. "Technically, you're going to tell them there's a better way to do things. It's different," Jennifer winked, "and much more diplomatic." The executives began to arrive, taking their seats around the table. Daisy recognized most of the faces from the previous meeting: the skeptical finance director, Moretti, who always seemed genuinely interested, and William, who entered last and sat at the head of the table with that unreadable expression she was starting to know all too well. "Let's begin," William said, flipping through some documents. "Miss Stevens, I believe you have an alternative proposal for our restructuring." "Yes, sir?" Daisy stood up, connecting her laptop to the projector. Her hands trembled slightly, but she hid it well. "I've spent the past few weeks analyzing our internal processes and talking with employees from different departments. What I found was quite revealing." The first slide showed a detailed chart. "Our biggest problem isn't the number of employees. It's the lack of communication between departments and redundant processes that make people waste time on tasks that could be automated or simplified." Daisy moved to the next slide, gaining confidence. "For example, the customer service department currently fills out 4 different forms to resolve a single complaint. Each form goes to a different department, and the information often gets lost along the way. If we create an integrated system, we can reduce that process to one form that automatically updates all the relevant departments." "That's just one example," the finance director interrupted. "How does that translate into a 20% increase in efficiency?" "I'm getting to that," Daisy said calmly. "I identified 15 main processes that are running inefficiently. Together, they represent roughly 120 hours of wasted work per week. If we optimize each of these processes, not only can we keep every job, but we also free up time for employees to focus on tasks that truly add value." She showed detailed spreadsheets, implementation schedules, and even quotes from employees she had interviewed. Every argument was supported by concrete data, and every projection was based on real analysis. The initial investment to implement these changes is about $200,000, Daisy continued. It may sound like a lot at first, but if we compare it to the costs of employee terminations, future recruiting, and lost productivity during adjustment periods, we actually save around $300,000 in the first year. And that's without counting the positive impact on team morale and customer satisfaction. The silence that followed was different from the silence in the previous meeting. It wasn't shock, it was genuine consideration. Daisy could see the executives processing the information, doing mental math, weighing pros and cons. "How many employees did you talk to while preparing this?" Moretti asked, flipping through the printed copy Daisy had handed out. 63, sir. From every department in the company, Daisy replied. I wanted a full picture of how things really work day to day, not just what the official reports say. Impressive, Moretti murmured, more to himself than to anyone else. The finance director still looked skeptical, but less defensive. And how long would it take to implement all this? 6 months for full implementation, with measurable results starting to appear by the 3rd month. Daisy answered without hesitation. She had prepared for every possible question. I suggest we start with a pilot project in 2 departments to prove the effectiveness before expanding company-wide. Throughout the entire presentation, William hadn't said a single word. Daisy tried not to look in his direction too often, but it was impossible not to feel his intimidating presence at the head of the table. When she finally finished and sat back down, the discussion began. The executives debated the merits of the proposal, raised questions, and suggested adjustments. It was exactly the kind of reception Daisy had hoped for, a serious, thoughtful discussion, not the outright dismissal she had feared. Mr. Porter, the finance director finally turned to William. What's your opinion on the proposal? All eyes shifted toward the head of the table. Daisy held her breath. William stayed silent for what felt like an eternity. Then, to everyone's surprise, especially Daisy's, he nodded slowly. It's a solid proposal, he admitted, the words clearly costing him some effort. Well-grounded, supported by real data, and with a realistic implementation plan. I approve the pilot project. Ms. Stevens will be responsible for leading the implementation in the 2 selected departments. Daisy blinked, certain she had misheard. I'll be leading it? You developed the proposal. You know every detail. You've talked to the employees. It makes sense for you to take the lead, William said, meeting her eyes for the first time during the meeting. Unless you don't feel capable. It was a challenge disguised as an opportunity, and they both knew it. William was testing her, betting she would back down from the responsibility. I accept, Daisy said without hesitation, lifting her chin. I'll need a support team and authorization to make the necessary changes to the processes. You will. Moretti stepped in before William could respond. Put your team together and present a detailed schedule by the end of the week. The meeting was adjourned, and Daisy suddenly found herself surrounded by a few executives asking follow-up questions and offering suggestions. When she finally managed to leave the room, her legs felt weak, and she had a silly grin on her face that she simply couldn't hide. You did it. Jennifer hugged her the moment she walked into the department. They not only approved it, they put you in charge. That's amazing. I'm still processing it, Daisy admitted, dropping into her chair. Seriously, what just happened? You impressed a room full of hardened executives. That's what happened, Jennifer laughed. And my goodness, the look on William's face when he had to admit your proposal was good, that was the highlight of my corporate career. Daisy laughed, but the mention of William brought back that strange moment from the meeting. He had approved her proposal, and more than that, he had trusted her to lead the project. It didn't make sense. The last thing William wanted was to see her succeed, right? Hey, come back to earth, Jennifer snapped her fingers in front of Daisy's face. No time for overthinking. You have a project to build and a team to form. You can celebrate later. You're right, Daisy shook her head, Rarf pushing away her thoughts. I need to start working on the schedule and figure out who to invite to the team. Do you already have someone in mind? A few people, Daisy said, opening her laptop. I talked to a lot of folks during my research. There are some really talented employees who've never had a chance to show what they can do, kind of like me a few months ago. Jennifer smiled. You're going to give others the same kind of opportunity you got. I like that. As Daisy started taking notes, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Good presentation. Don't mess up the project. WP. She stared at the message for a long moment, unsure how to feel. Was that a compliment? A threat? A little of both? In the end, she decided it didn't matter. She had a project to lead, and she was going to give it everything she had. Over the next few days, Daisy became a whirlwind of energy and determination. She carefully built her team, choosing employees she had met during her research, people who not only had skill, but a genuine desire to make a difference. There was Thomas, from customer service, who had brilliant ideas but was never heard. Linda, from accounting, who knew the systems better than anyone. And Patrick, a junior analyst who had an impressive eye for process improvement. Welcome to the most ambitious and potentially disastrous project of your careers, Daisy said at their first team meeting, smiling with a mix of confidence and nerves. We're going to change how this company operates, and there's a 50-50 chance we'll end up as heroes or unemployed. How inspiring, Thomas laughed. I love when the odds are evenly split. The project kicked off with full energy. Daisy split her time between meetings with different departments, data analysis, and the gradual implementation of changes. It was exhausting, but also exciting to see things start coming together. The problem was that William had decided to oversee every single step of the project personally. And when I say every step, I mean every small detail, every decision, every report. Miss Stevens, I need you to explain why you decided to start with the logistics department instead of finance, he said one afternoon, showing up at her cubicle holding a copy of the schedule. Good afternoon to you too, William, Daisy replied without looking up from her spreadsheet. I'm fine, thanks for asking. And you? This isn't a joke. I'm talking about strategic decisions. And I'm talking about basic manners, Daisy finally looked at him. But since you asked so politely, I started with logistics, because that's where we identified the most critical bottlenecks. Solving those first creates a positive ripple effect across other departments. It's all explained in the report I sent yesterday, the one that had 23 pages and that you clearly didn't read all the way through. William clenched his jaw. I read the entire report. Then why are you asking questions that are answered on page 12? The tension between them was almost tangible, and Thomas, who happened to be walking by, made a quick strategic turn in the opposite direction, clearly wanting no part of the crossfire. I'm just making sure you know what you're doing, William said, his voice lower now. I'm just asking you to trust the work you assigned me to do, Daisy shot back. Look, I know you're waiting for me to fail, for me to prove you were right about me all along, but I'm not going to make it easy for you. This project is going to work. Your confidence is admirable, or delusional. I haven't decided which, William said, turning to leave, but then stopped. Follow-up meeting tomorrow at 9. Don't be late. I'm never late, Daisy murmured once he was far enough away not to hear. Unlike a certain $5,000 payment that's been overdue for weeks. The weeks passed at a frantic pace. The pilot project was starting to show results. Small at first, but steady. The problem resolution time in the logistics department dropped 17% in the first 3 weeks. Employees reported less frustration with redundant processes, and surprisingly, team morale had visibly improved. It's working, Linda said during one of the team meetings, showing the latest numbers. It's actually working. I can't believe it. Hey, have a little faith in your fearless leader, Daisy said, pretending to be offended. I told you it would work. You also said we had a 50% chance of getting fired, Patrick reminded her with a laugh. Minor technicality, Daisy shrugged. The important thing is, we're on the right track, but we can't relax. William's waiting for any mistake so he can say he knew this wouldn't work. As if summoned, William appeared at the meeting room door at that exact moment. Am I interrupting something important? He asked, walking in without waiting for an answer. Just saving the company from poor management decisions, Daisy replied sweetly. Nothing major. The team tried to hide their smiles. William ignored the comment and got straight to the point. The board wants a preliminary results presentation. Next week. Daisy felt her stomach tighten. Next week? That's too soon. We're still in the middle of implementation. They want to know if it's worth continuing the investment or if they should go back to the original downsizing plan. William crossed his arms. You have 6 days to prepare something convincing. 6 days, Daisy repeated, mentally calculating everything that needed to be done. Of course, why allow a reasonable deadline when we can add unnecessary pressure? Welcome to the corporate world, William replied. I thought you'd be used to it by now. After he left, the team looked at Daisy with obvious concern. Can we actually prepare something solid in 6 days? Thomas asked. We'll have to. Daisy took a deep breath. All right, new plan. We need to compile all the data we have, do comparative analyses, prepare projections, and create a presentation that makes it absolutely clear this project isn't just working, it's essential for the company's future. No pressure, Linda muttered. Lots of pressure, Daisy corrected with a tired smile. But if I manage to go from housekeeper to project leader in a few months, we can pull off a killer presentation in 6 days. The next few days were a marathon of work. Daisy and her team practically lived in the office, organizing data, creating charts, refining arguments. Jennifer brought coffee and words of encouragement. Moretti stopped by a few times to check their progress and always left impressed by the team's dedication. William also showed up, but his visits were different. He didn't make sarcastic remarks like before. He just observed, occasionally offering an unexpectedly helpful suggestion, and left without saying much. He's acting weird, Thomas said after one of those visits. Less hostile, it's suspicious. Maybe he's planning something, Patrick suggested. Or maybe, Linda offered, he's starting to realize Daisy knows what she's doing. Daisy said nothing, but secretly hoped Linda was right. The night before the presentation, Daisy was alone in the office, reviewing the slides one last time. It was almost midnight when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Surprised, she looked up and saw William standing at the entrance of her cubicle. Still here? He asked. I could say the same about you. Daisy saved the file and leaned back in her chair. Did you come to check if I'm ready to fail tomorrow? I came to bring this, he said, placing an envelope on her desk. Daisy picked it up, puzzled. Inside was a check for $5,000. The gala dinner payment, William said, his hands in his pockets. With interest for the delay. Daisy looked at the check, then at him, completely speechless for the first time in weeks. You deserve to be paid, he continued, and I should have done it weeks ago. Consider this my apology for several things. Several things, Daisy repeated slowly. That's specific. For treating you like an accessory, for underestimating you, for making your job harder than it needed to be, William listed, and it seemed to cost him every word. Your project is working, better than I expected, better than anyone expected. That was almost a compliment, Daisy said, blinking dramatically. Am I hallucinating from exhaustion, or did William Porter just admit I was right? A faint smile appeared at the corner of William's mouth. Don't get used to it. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll go back to being unbearable by tomorrow morning, Daisy said, tucking the check into her purse. But thank you for this and for, not actively sabotaging me. The bar is pretty low if that earns a thank you, he remarked. Well, you're the one who set it that low. William laughed. It was a short, unexpected sound, but genuine. Good luck tomorrow, Daisy, not that you'll need it. And with that, he left, leaving Daisy alone with her confused thoughts and a $5,000 check in her purse. Maybe, just maybe, William Porter wasn't only the arrogant millionaire she thought she knew. The next morning, Daisy woke up to her alarm ringing insistently at 6 a.m. She'd only slept 4 hours, but adrenaline was already rushing through her veins. Today was the day. The presentation that would determine whether her project continued or if everything went back to the original downsizing plan. She chose an outfit that was professional yet confident, practiced her speech 3 times in the mirror, and left home with her slides saved on 2 flash drives, because she didn't trust technology in critical moments. When she arrived at the office, her team was already gathered in the conference room, all wearing the same mix of nervousness and determination. Did anyone sleep? Daisy asked, setting her folder on the table. Sleep is for the weak, Thomas said, clearly overcaffeinated. And for people who don't have to convince a board of grumpy executives that change is possible. Such an inspiring speech. Linda rolled her eyes. We'll all have ulcers before we're 30. I'm 32, so I'm safe, Patrick added, trying to lighten the mood. The main conference room started filling up at 8:45. Daisy watched through the glass wall as the board members arrived, all in flawless suits and serious expressions. Moretti gave her an encouraging smile. The finance director simply nodded, as neutral as ever. William was the last to arrive, exactly at 8:59. His eyes met Daisy's for a brief moment, and he gave her a barely noticeable nod. She couldn't tell if it was encouragement or just acknowledgement, but somehow it helped. It's time, Jennifer appeared beside her. You're going to be great. Daisy took a deep breath, grabbed her laptop, and walked into the room. Good morning, everyone, she began, connecting her equipment to the projector. Thank you for taking the time to hear about the progress of the process optimization project. The first slide displayed a clear, concise executive summary. Over the past 6 weeks, we've implemented structural changes in 2 pilot departments, logistics and customer service. The results so far have exceeded our initial projections. She moved to the performance charts. The upward lines were undeniable. In logistics, we reduced average processing time by 22%. In customer service, first contact resolution rates increased by 18%. But the most important results aren't the ones shown in traditional charts. Daisy displayed employee satisfaction survey data. Morale in the involved departments has improved significantly. We've had 0 resignations in the past 6 weeks, compared to a historical average of 3 to 4 per month, and customer satisfaction ratings have improved by 12%. Impressive numbers, one of the board members commented. But how much of this is just the novelty effect? How do you ensure it's sustainable? Excellent question. Daisy was ready for it. We implemented continuous monitoring systems and created weekly feedback groups. Employees now have an active voice to suggest additional improvements, creating a constant cycle of progress. This isn't a one-time change. It's a cultural shift. The finance director raised his hand. And the cost? Are we within the projected budget? 7% under, Daisy smiled. We discovered that many of the necessary changes didn't require major investment, just smart reorganization of existing resources. The presentation went on for another 20 minutes. Daisy answered every question with concrete data, practical examples, and realistic projections. Her team had done an exceptional job compiling everything, and she made sure to credit each one of them. When she finally finished, the silence in the room was one of consideration, not doubt. Any final questions? Daisy asked, setting down the remote. Moretti was the first to speak. Miss Stevens, in your professional opinion, should we expand this project to the entire company? Yes, sir. Daisy didn't hesitate. But gradually and strategically, we suggest expanding to 4 more departments next quarter, evaluating the results, making adjustments if needed, and then moving toward full implementation. Change that happens too fast can be just as harmful as no change at all. Sensible, Moretti nodded, looking at the other board members. I vote to continue and expand the project. One by one, the board members voiced their support, some with enthusiasm, others with caution, but all acknowledging that the results spoke for themselves. When it was William's turn, Daisy held her breath without realizing it. The project has shown effectiveness beyond initial expectations, he said, keeping a professional tone. I approve the expansion as proposed by Miss Stevens, and I suggest she be officially promoted to Project Optimization Manager with the authority to make implementation decisions without needing prior board approval. Daisy blinked. She was sure she'd heard wrong. I agree, Moretti said right away. Her leadership has been exemplary. She deserves both recognition and autonomy. The board approved it unanimously. Daisy left that room in complete shock. Not only would the project continue, but she had just been promoted to a management position in less than 3 months at the company. You did it! Thomas hugged her the moment she returned to where the team was waiting anxiously. We did it. This is crazy, Daisy laughed, almost crying at the same time. Completely insane and wonderful. The celebration was interrupted when William appeared at the door. Team, excellent work, he said, surprising everyone. You all have the rest of the day off. Consider it a performance bonus." The team cheered and left, leaving Daisy and William alone in the hallway. "Thank you," she said simply. "For the promotion, for supporting the project, for doing my job?" William raised an eyebrow. "You delivered results. I'd be a fool not to recognize that. Even so, I know it wasn't easy for you to admit the former housekeeper knows what she's doing. You're going to remind me of that for the rest of my life, aren't you?" he asked, but there was humor in his voice. "Probably," Daisy admitted with a smile. "It's part of my annoying charm." "Annoying is the right word," William agreed, but he was smiling too. "Daisy, I wanted to apologize properly. Not just for the late payment, but for everything. For how I treated you at first, for the times I tried to make you quit, for not seeing your potential when it was right in front of me." "Apology accepted," Daisy said, "but only because you finally admitted out loud that I'm amazing." "I didn't say that. It's implied." William shook his head, but the smile stayed. "Would you like to have lunch? To celebrate the promotion? No business talk, just a normal conversation between coworkers." Daisy hesitated for only a second. There was something different in the way he asked. It wasn't the cold, calculated offer from the gala dinner. It was genuine. "All right, but you're paying. Managers earn less than CEOs." "Fair enough." They went to a nearby restaurant, a simple and pleasant place. The conversation flowed surprisingly well. William talked about the pressure of running a company he inherited from his father, about impossible expectations and the constant fear of failure. Daisy shared her story of studying at night while working during the day, of never giving up despite every closed door. "You know what's funny?" Daisy said between bites of salad. "If you hadn't had that ridiculous idea to take me to the gala dinner, none of this would have happened. I'd still be cleaning houses, you'd still be making terrible decisions, and the company would probably be worse off." "So you're saying my terrible idea was actually brilliant?" William teased. "Let's not go that far," Daisy laughed. "It was a terrible idea with unexpectedly positive consequences. There's a difference." "I'll take it." When they returned to the office, something had changed between them. The hostility had been replaced by genuine, mutual respect. And maybe, just maybe, something more that neither of them was ready to name yet. But the work went on. Daisy had a project expansion to plan and a team to lead. And for the first time since she joined the company, she truly felt like she belonged there. The following months were the most intense of Daisy's professional life. Expanding the project to 4 more departments required complex coordination, negotiations with managers resistant to change, and long working hours. But the results kept coming, steady and impressive. What no one expected was how much the dynamic between Daisy and William would change in the process. They started working together more and more, discussing strategies, debating approaches, and, surprisingly, agreeing most of the time. "This is getting scary," Jennifer remarked one afternoon, watching Daisy and William review reports side by side. "You two are actually working in harmony. Where's the Daisy who used to call him an arrogant millionaire?" "She's still here," Daisy whispered back. "Just temporarily in professional mode. She could resurface at any moment." But the truth was more complicated. The more Daisy worked with William, the more she discovered the layers he kept hidden beneath that cold exterior. He was a perfectionist to the point of exhaustion, but not out of arrogance, out of fear of disappointing others. He was controlling because he had never learned to trust people. And when he let his guard down, he had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh more than she cared to admit. "I need you to review this contract before I sign it." William appeared in her office one afternoon holding a thick folder. "It's about the supplier partnership for the new logistics system." "I'm in human resources, not legal," Daisy pointed out, but she took the folder anyway. "You understand processes better than anyone here. I trust your judgment." Daisy froze halfway through opening the folder. "Did you just say you trust me?" "Don't make an event out of it." "Oh, it's absolutely an event," Daisy grinned. "I need to document this historic moment. William Porter admitting he trusts someone. Where's my phone?" "You're unbearable," he said. But he was smiling, and you're smiling. Another event worth noting. The truth was, those moments were becoming more and more frequent, conversations that started about work and ended on personal topics. lunches that became almost routine, glances that lasted a second longer than was professionally appropriate. Jennifer was the first to notice, of course. "You're in love with him," she declared bluntly during a coffee break. Daisy choked on her drink. "What? No. It's just professional respect." "Professional respect doesn't make you check your hair every time he walks into the room." "I don't do that." "You do. And he does the same thing when he knows he's going to see you." "Jennifer, you're imagining things. William and I are colleagues. Colleagues who were at each other's throats not long ago, by the way." "Exactly. You two have that enemies-to-lovers kind of energy you see in TV dramas," Jennifer said with a knowing sparkle in her eyes. "It's classic." "That's ridiculous, and I have work to do." Daisy escaped the conversation, but Jennifer's words kept echoing in her head. Could it be true? Had she actually developed feelings for William Porter, the man who once took her to a gala dinner just to have her sit quietly as decoration? The same man who tried to pay her to quit her job? No, it was absurd, completely unthinkable, totally. "Daisy, are you listening to me?" William's voice pulled her back to reality. They were in yet another meeting, just the two of them this time, reviewing the plans for the next quarter. "Sorry, my mind wandered for a second. What did you say?" "I asked if you have plans for Friday night." Daisy's heart skipped a beat. "Why?" "There's a company charity event. Formal dinner, music, the usual. It's typically mandatory for managers," William said, shuffling papers without looking at her. "I thought maybe you'd like to go. Is it part of the job requirement?" "Technically, yes." "Then why are you asking like it's an invitation?" William finally looked at her, and there was something different in his expression. "Because this time I don't want you to go out of obligation. I want you to go as a willing guest." The silence that followed stretched for seconds that felt like hours. "This is a terrible idea," Daisy finally said. "Probably. We work together. It could complicate things. Definitely. And you're technically my boss. Technically, you report to Moretti, who reports to me, so there's an intermediate layer." "Are you trying to find loopholes now?" "I'm trying to find a reason for you to say yes," William admitted, and the honesty in his voice completely disarmed Daisy's defenses. She should say no. It was the sensible, professional, safe thing to do. But Daisy Stevens had never been particularly good at doing the sensible thing. "All right, I'll go," she said, trying to sound casual. "But this time, I'm not keeping quiet if someone says something stupid. I wouldn't expect anything less." The week leading up to Friday went by in a blur of nerves and denial. Daisy swung between excitement and panic, sometimes both in the same minute. "I need a dress," she told Jennifer on Thursday. "A real dress, not the one I bought on clearance years ago." Finally, "We're going shopping after work today." Finding the right dress turned into a mission. Daisy tried on at least 15 options before finding an emerald green one that was elegant without being flashy, sophisticated, but still something she would actually wear. "Perfect," Jennifer approved. "William's going to have a heart attack when he sees you." "The goal isn't to kill the man, Jennifer." "Of course not. Just leave him speechless for a few seconds. Totally different thing." Friday night came way too fast. Daisy got ready with meticulous care, remembering the contrast to the first time she'd gone to an event as William's companion. This time was different. She was different. They were different. William arrived right on time at 7. When she opened the door, his expression made every bit of nervousness worth it. "You look wow," was all he managed to say. "As eloquent as ever," Daisy teased, but she was smiling. "You look presentable yourself." "Only presentable?" "I'm not feeding your ego more than that." The drive to the event was more relaxed than Daisy expected. They talked about everything and nothing, laughing easily. When they arrived, William offered his arm, not mechanically like the first time, but with genuine courtesy. "Ready to face the corporate elite again?" he asked. "Born ready. Last time I was the undercover housekeeper. Now I'm a project manager. Big difference." "You've always been more than any title," William said softly, and Daisy felt her face warm. The event was packed. Daisy recognized many faces, including Moretti, who waved enthusiastically when he saw her. This time when people asked who she was, William introduced her with unmistakable pride. "This is Daisy Stevens, our process optimization manager. She's responsible for the extraordinary results you've been hearing about." No vague introductions. No treating her like an accessory. It was genuine, respectful, and it made Daisy's heart beat faster than what was professionally appropriate. They had dinner, talked, and even danced when the music started. And there, on the dance floor, with William's hand resting on her waist and his eyes locked on hers, Daisy had to admit the truth she'd been avoiding. She was completely, hopelessly in love with William Porter. And from the way he looked at her, the way he smiled only when they were together, the way he found excuses to touch her lightly, Daisy suspected she wasn't alone in that feeling. "What are you thinking about?" William asked as they danced. "That this is very different from the first time we went to an event together." "Better or worse?" "Definitely better," Daisy admitted. "Even if it's complicated and potentially disastrous for our careers. Some risks are worth it," William said, and there was a promise in his voice that made Daisy's stomach flutter with anticipation. When the night ended and William walked her to her apartment door, there was a moment of hesitation. They both knew that crossing that line meant there would be no going back. "Good night, Daisy," William said at last. "Good night, William." But neither of them moved, and then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, William leaned in and kissed her. Soft at first, hesitant, then deeper as Daisy responded. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling like teenagers. "That was," William began. "A terrible idea?" Daisy finished. "I was going to say inevitable, but terrible idea works too. We'll have to talk about this on Monday." "Definitely." For now, though, they just smiled at each other, both knowing everything had changed again. And this time, for good. Monday arrived with cruel punctuality. Daisy had spent all of Sunday switching between replaying the kiss in her mind and panicking over the professional consequences. When she got to the office, she was ready for a serious, mature conversation about boundaries and professionalism. What she didn't expect was to find William already in her office, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression that mixed nerves and determination. "We need to talk," they said at the same time, and the tension broke into nervous laughter. "You first," Daisy said, closing the door behind her. William took a deep breath. Friday night was, "I don't regret it, not one bit, but I'll understand if you think it was a mistake. If you want us to go back to being just co-workers, I'll respect that." "You rehearsed that, didn't you?" Daisy asked, taking one of the coffees. 3 times in the mirror this morning." "Why? Did it sound unnatural?" "A little too formal. You sound like you're giving a board presentation," Daisy said, sitting on the edge of the desk. "But since you were honest, I'll be too. I don't regret it either. In fact, it would be a lie to say I hadn't thought about it before Friday." "Really?" William looked genuinely surprised. "Please, I'm not boosting your ego by confirming how long." Daisy took a sip of her coffee. "But we do have a practical problem. You're basically my boss. I'm managing a key project. People are going to talk. They'll talk anyway. I've already heard at least 5 different theories about us in the executive lounge," William admitted. "Ranging from, they'll eventually kill each other, to, they're secretly dating already." "Well, the first one was accurate for a few months," Daisy noted. "Maybe we're just meeting expectations by confirming the second." "So you want to give it a try?" William stepped closer. "Even with all the complications?" "I do," Daisy said without hesitation. "But with rules. At work, we're professionals. No special treatment, no favoritism, no couple arguments in meetings." "I completely agree. And if it doesn't work, if things get awkward, it can't affect the project or my job." "Never," William promised. "You built this on your own merit. Nothing will change that." "Good. So I guess we're dating now?" Daisy smiled. "Feels strange saying that out loud." "Extremely strange," William agreed. But he was smiling too. "And we'll probably regret it at some point." "Definitely. But let's have fun until then." Keeping their relationship discreet at the office turned out to be harder than they expected. Not because they wanted to show affection in public, but because it was almost impossible to hide the goofy smiles that appeared whenever they were in the same room. "You're not fooling anyone," Jennifer declared after watching a meeting where Daisy and William could barely stop exchanging glances. "It's obvious." "I don't know what you're talking about." Daisy tried to keep a straight face. "Daisy, he smiled 4 times during that meeting. 4. The man averaged half a smile a month before you. The math doesn't lie." Okay, maybe we're seeing where things go. Finally, Jennifer hugged her. Can I tell anyone, or is it a secret? Let's keep it quiet for now. We don't want to be hallway gossip. Too late. Within a week, half the office was already whispering about the change in dynamics between the optimization manager and the CEO. The theories were creative, to say the least. I heard you two met on a dating app, Thomas said during a team lunch. I heard it was an arranged meeting between families, Linda added. Like one of those convenient marriages that turned into love. The version I heard is that you were secret rivals in college and now you're resolving the tension, Patrick chimed in. Daisy nearly choked on her water. None of those are even remotely true. So what's the truth? They all asked in unison. The truth is we started off terribly, worked together, got to know each other better, and decided to give it a chance. Nothing dramatic, no soap opera, Daisy explained. Sorry to disappoint. That's even better than the theories, Thomas said. It's real. While her personal life blossomed, work moved at full speed. The project's expansion to the entire company was approved, and Daisy found herself managing a much larger team. It was challenging, exhausting, but incredibly rewarding. What she didn't expect was the growing resistance from some of the older executives. People used to the old ways didn't like a young manager changing systems that had been in place for decades. She's too young to lead something of this scale, Daisy overheard the operations director saying in a meeting she wasn't supposed to hear. And let's be honest, she's only where she is because the CEO is interested in her. Anger flared instantly. But before Daisy could storm into the room, Jennifer grabbed her arm. It's not worth it. Let your work speak for you. He's dismissing everything I've built. And you're going to prove him wrong by staying professional and continuing to deliver excellent results, Jennifer said firmly. Don't give him the satisfaction of seeing you lose your temper. Daisy took several deep breaths. Jennifer was right, but it took everything in her not to barge into that room and deliver a speech about sexism and meritocracy. That night, when she told William about the comment, he was furious. Who said that? I'll have a serious talk with him tomorrow. No, Daisy stopped him. That'll only prove his point, that I need you to defend me. I need to handle this myself, in my own way. Which would be being so good at my job that it becomes impossible to deny my competence, Daisy said with determination, and maybe giving a presentation at the next general meeting showing exactly how my project has impacted company profits. Numbers don't lie. You're terrifying when you're determined. It's incredibly attractive. Focus, William. We're having a professional moment here. Right? Sorry, he tried to look serious, but he was smiling. Go ahead with your plan for corporate domination through undeniable competence. And that's exactly what Daisy did. At the next general meeting, she presented consolidated data from the 9 months since the project began. The company's overall productivity had increased by 18%. Employee satisfaction was up 23%. And most importantly, profits had risen 12%, exceeding every initial projection. That represents approximately $4 million in direct gains, Daisy concluded, looking straight at the operations director, who had doubted her. Compared to the original downsizing plan, which would have saved $2 million but cost us valuable talent and team morale, the math is clear. The silence in the room was one of admiration, not doubt. Even the operations director had to nod in acknowledgement, though clearly against his will. After the meeting, Moretti called her in for a private conversation. Daisy, I have a proposal for you. We're considering creating a new department, Director of People and Organizational Culture. It's a new position focused on ensuring the company continues to grow without losing sight of its people. We'd like you to take it. Daisy was speechless for a moment. Director? That would be a huge leap, I know, but you've shown not only technical skill, but real leadership and strategic vision. The board voted unanimously in favor. And William? Did he know about this proposal? He abstained from the vote to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest, Moretti explained. But between us, he was the first to suggest your name when we discussed creating the role. Daisy didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Less than a year ago, she'd been cleaning houses. Now she was being invited to join the company's executive team. I accept, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion, and I'll live up to your trust." We never doubted that. When Daisy left the room, she found William waiting in the hallway. "So, what did Moretti want?" "He offered me a director position." Daisy was still processing. "A director position, William?" "Me? And you accepted?" "Obviously." William pulled her into a hug right there in the hallway, completely forgetting the professionalism they'd promised to maintain at work. "I'm proud of you, even if now we're technically on the same level, which makes our situation even more complicated." "Always complicated." Daisy laughed against his chest, but this time in a good way. And as they stepped apart before anyone could see them, both knew they were building something special. Not just a relationship, but a true partnership based on respect, mutual admiration, and the impressive ability to annoy each other in increasingly creative ways. The following months were a real roller coaster. Daisy took on her new director role with the same energy she'd brought to every previous project. But the scale was much bigger now. She had a direct voice in the company's strategic decisions, sat in top-level meetings, and had to balance long-term vision with immediate results. And of course, she still had to deal with William, who continued to be a fascinating mix of brilliant CEO and stubborn man who thought he was always right. "We can't invest $300,000 in a wellness program right now," William said during an executive committee meeting. "We have other priority expenses." "Other expenses like what? More imported furniture for your office?" Daisy shot back and felt all eyes turn toward her. "Sorry, that was uncalled for. But my point stands. Investing in employee wellness isn't a luxury. It's a talent retention strategy." "Do we have data to back that up?" the finance director asked. "I have a 40-slide presentation proving exactly that if you'd like to see it," Daisy replied. "I can schedule it for tomorrow." William stared at her from across the table, something between irritation and admiration in his eyes. "Schedule it. We'll review the data before making a decision." After the meeting, William followed her to her office. "Imported furniture? Really?" he said, closing the door behind him. "It was a cheap shot, I admit," Daisy said, spinning her chair to face him. "But you were being impossible. Again." "I'm trying to balance budgets, Daisy. It's not personal." "Everything is personal when it involves people," she countered. "That's the difference between how you see the company and how I see it. To you, they're numbers. To me, they're lives that depend on the decisions we make in this room." William sighed, running a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture of frustration Daisy knew so well. "You're right, again. It's annoying how you're always right lately." "Not always. Just 90% of the time," Daisy smiled. "I let you be right the other 10% so your ego doesn't get bruised." "How generous," he said, stepping closer to her desk. "Dinner tonight? I need to make up for being impossible in the meeting." "You're paying?" "Obviously." "Then I accept. But no work talk. I'm tired of spreadsheets and projections." "Deal." Their relationship had found a peculiar but functional rhythm. At work, they were professionals who sometimes disagreed passionately about strategy. Outside of work, they were a couple discovering new layers of each other day by day. Daisy learned that William had a surprisingly sentimental side. He kept old movie tickets and faded photos in a box he never showed anyone. William discovered that Daisy sang in the shower, always off-key, and had an irrational fear of clowns since childhood. "Seriously? Clowns?" he laughed when she confessed during dinner. "Of all things, clowns? Don't laugh, it's a legitimate fear. They're creepy with those painted faces and huge shoes," Daisy defended herself. "And those red noses? No, thank you. I'll make sure never to take you to a circus." "Great idea. Add that to the list of things that make a healthy relationship." But it wasn't all romantic dinners and cute discoveries. The pressure at work kept growing, and it began to take its toll. Daisy worked late almost every night, took work home on weekends, and barely had time to breathe. "You're burning out," Jennifer warned one afternoon, watching Daisy gulp her third cup of coffee of the day. "When was the last time you slept 8 straight hours?" "Sleeping is for people without ambitious goals," Daisy joked, but the joke fell flat. "This isn't funny. You're pale, you've got dark circles, and yesterday I saw you put salt in your coffee instead of sugar." "I was experimenting with new flavors? Daisy, I'm serious." "I know." Daisy set the cup down. But there's so much happening. The new structure rollout, the social projects I want to launch, the resistance I still get from some of the older executives. If I stop, it feels like everything will fall apart. Or maybe you just need to trust your team more. Delegate. You know, those things you're always preaching, but never practicing. It was true. Daisy was great at talking about teamwork and sharing responsibility, but terrible at applying it to herself. The girl who had spent years doing everything alone because no one gave her a chance now didn't know how to ask for help, even when she had people she could count on. William noticed too. One night when Daisy fell asleep on his couch surrounded by documents, he quietly put everything away and covered her with a blanket. "You're working yourself to death," he said the next morning when she woke up, disoriented at 6. "Good morning to you too." Daisy rubbed her eyes. "What time is it?" "Time we had a talk about boundaries and mental health." "Sounds fun. Do you have coffee?" "Daisy, I'm serious." William sat beside her. "You're doing exactly what I used to do, trying to control everything, carrying all the weight alone, never asking for help. And look where that got me before you came into my life. Alone, miserable, and almost losing the company. But I don't want to disappoint anyone. I've worked so hard to get here. And no one's going to take that from you just because you delegate some responsibilities," William said, taking her hand. "You've built an incredible team." "Do you trust them?" "Of course I do." "Then let them help. Being a leader isn't about doing everything yourself, it's knowing when to ask for support." It was the same lesson Daisy had tried to teach William months before. The irony wasn't lost on her. "You're using my own words against me." "I learned from the best," he smiled. "So, are you going to take the advice or keep being stubborn?" "Can I be stubborn for 5 more minutes and then take the advice?" "Fair enough." Change didn't come easily. Daisy had to consciously force herself to share projects, trust her team, and, hardest of all, accept that she didn't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. She already had. Repeatedly. "How are you feeling?" William asked a few weeks later when she got home from work at a reasonable hour for the first time in months. "Strangely relaxed. And a little guilty about being relaxed," Daisy admitted. "But Thomas is leading the integration project, Linda took over the quarterly reports, and Patrick is managing the mentorship program. And you know what? They're doing an excellent job." Imagine that. Competent people doing competent work when given the chance. No need to rub it in that you were right. "But it's so satisfying," William pulled her into a hug. "And now that you have more free time, we can finally take that trip we talked about." The trip? Daisy had completely forgotten. They'd talked about taking a long weekend somewhere with no phones, no internet, nothing work-related. "When?" "Next month. I already booked a cabin in the mountains. 3 days of peace, nature, and 0 corporate strategy discussions." "You booked it without asking me?" "I knew if I waited for you to have free time to discuss it, we'd be waiting until next year." William defended himself. "But if you want, I can cancel." "No, don't cancel," Daisy interrupted quickly. 3 days in the mountains sounds perfect. Just, will there be Wi-Fi for emergencies?" Daisy. Okay, no Wi-Fi. I can do this. Totally capable of being disconnected for 3 days." "We'll see," William laughed. "I bet $20 you won't last the first day." Bet accepted. Get ready to lose. Spoiler, Daisy didn't even make it through half the first day. But she discovered the world didn't end if she didn't check her emails for a few hours. In fact, she realized that disconnecting was exactly what she needed. Between hiking trails, candlelit conversations when the power went out, and disastrous but hilarious attempts at cooking without a recipe, Daisy and William found something they'd both lost in the chaos of corporate life. Simplicity. "You know what's funny?" Daisy said on their last night, sitting on the porch under the stars. "A year ago, I was cleaning your house, thinking you were the most arrogant human being I'd ever met." "I was," William admitted without hesitation. "You changed me, Daisy. You made me face things I'd been avoiding, taught me how to actually lead, not just manage. You turned my world upside down. In the best way possible, I hope. The only way that matters." And there, under the starry sky, far from meetings, spreadsheets, and corporate pressure, they were just Daisy and William. Not a director and a CEO, just 2 people who'd found something real in the middle of chaos. "I love you," William said suddenly, and Daisy's heart skipped a beat. "Took you long enough to say it," she replied with a smile. "I love you too, even when you're impossible in meetings. Especially when I'm impossible in meetings." Let's not go that far. As they laughed together under the stars, they both knew they'd found something rare and precious. Something worth every argument, every challenge, every hard moment it took to get there. The return from the trip brought renewed energy. Daisy came back to the office more balanced, William seemed less tense, and the company continued to thrive under the new organizational culture they had built together. But, like every good story, there was always an unexpected challenge waiting around the corner. "We need to talk," Moretti called Daisy and William into a closed meeting on a Tuesday morning. His expression was far too serious to be good news. This sounds dangerously close to one of those conversations that start with, "We need to talk about your performance." Daisy tried to ease the tension, but Moretti didn't smile. "Global Tech has made a merger proposal," he said bluntly. "A very generous one. The board is divided." William immediately stiffened. "A merger? They want to absorb Porter Enterprises?" "Technically, it would be a partnership, but we know how these things go. In 2 years, we'd be fully integrated with them and lose our identity," Moretti explained. "Some board members are excited about the numbers. Others, including myself, are concerned about what it would mean for our culture and our people." Daisy felt her stomach tighten. How many jobs would be affected? In the initial projections, about 30% redundancy. 300 people, Daisy. "No," William said instantly. "We're not even considering that." "William, we can't just reject it without presenting it to the board," Moretti said patiently. "They have the right to vote. We need a better strategy than simply saying no." "Then we'll give them a reason to say no," Daisy said, already thinking fast. "We need to prove Porter Enterprises is worth more on its own than in a merger." "Moretti, how long until the vote?" 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Daisy repeated, looking at William. "Can we do it?" "We can," he agreed, and in that moment, they were a team again. "We'll need updated data, growth projections, maybe a few smaller strategic partnerships to show our strength in the market. And we need to demonstrate the real value of our company culture," Daisy added. "Something that doesn't show up on spreadsheets, but makes all the difference." The next few days were frantic. Daisy and William practically lived in the office, putting together a comprehensive presentation that highlighted not just the company's impressive financial results, but also the human impact of the changes they had implemented. "Look at this," Daisy said late one night, showing him some data. "Since we introduced the new programs, our talent retention rate is the highest in the industry. Competitors are losing people to us, not the other way around. That's gold in terms of market value. And this here," William pointed to another chart. "Our internal innovation has gone up 40%. Happy, engaged employees generate more ideas, more solutions, more growth. See? People aren't just resources. They're assets." Daisy smiled tiredly. "You finally learned the lesson." "I had a great teacher. Annoying, but great." Jennifer showed up periodically with coffee and food, making sure they didn't collapse from hunger or exhaustion. "You two are impossible," she said, setting sandwiches on the table. "You work better together than apart, but you also stress each other out more when things get serious." "It's our peculiar way of functioning," Daisy said, grabbing a sandwich. "Thanks for keeping us alive." "Someone has to." The week before the final presentation, something unexpected happened. Employees from various departments started showing up at Daisy's office on their own. "We heard rumors about a possible merger," Thomas said, representing a group of at least 20 people. "We want to help. What can we do?" Daisy was touched. "You already do, every day. But if you really want to contribute, how about testimonials, real stories about how the company's changes have impacted your lives?" What followed was a wave of support that surprised even the most optimistic among them. Employees wrote testimonials, some recorded short videos, others created presentations showing improvements in their departments. It was a powerful demonstration that the company wasn't just William or the board. It was all those people working together. "This is incredible," William said, reviewing the material they had received. "I've never seen anything like this." "That's what happens when you treat people like people, not numbers," Daisy said softly. They give back when you need them the most. The night before the crucial meeting, Daisy and William were in his office, going over the presentation one last time. "Do you think it'll work?" she asked, a rare trace of insecurity in her voice. "It has to," William said. "Not just for the numbers or the company. For all those people who trusted us. I can't let them down." "We can't," Daisy corrected him with a smile. "Did you hear that? Not I. We. Look who's become a real team leader." "Shut up," he said, but he was smiling too. The morning of the decisive meeting arrived with a gray sky and a threat of rain. Daisy put on her most confident suit. William looked as impeccable as ever, and together they walked into the boardroom, ready for the biggest battle of their careers. The presentation lasted 2 hours. Daisy and William took turns, each bringing their unique perspective. Solid financial data, sustainable growth projections, strategic partnerships already in negotiation, and most importantly, real stories from employees whose lives had changed. "Global tech may offer quick money," Daisy concluded, "but we're building something worth far more than short-term profit. We're building loyalty, innovation, and a culture that attracts the best talent in the market. That can't be bought in any merger." The silence after the presentation was tense. Board members exchanged glances, took notes, whispered among themselves. Finally, Moretti stood. "Let's vote. All in favor of rejecting Global Tech's proposal and keeping Porter Enterprises independent?" One by one, the board members raised their hands. Some hesitated, but in the end, the vote was unanimous. "Proposal rejected," Moretti announced, and the relief in the room was palpable. "Porter Enterprises remains independent." Daisy and William left the room exhausted but victorious. In the hallway, away from the board's eyes, he pulled her into a tight hug. "We did it," he murmured. "We did," she repeated, "because we worked together, like real partners." About that, William stepped back slightly but kept his hands on her shoulders. "There's something I want to ask you. If this is about another last-minute project with an impossible deadline, the answer is no." "It's not about work." He took a deep breath, and Daisy realized he was genuinely nervous. "Daisy, these past few months have been the most challenging and the happiest of my life. You've completely changed me. You've made me a better person, a better leader, better at everything." "William, what are you?" "Let me finish before I lose my nerve," he interrupted with a nervous smile. "I know it's early. I know we still have a lot ahead of us, but I also know I don't want to spend a single day of my life without you in it. So," he got down on one knee right there in the corporate hallway and pulled a small box from his pocket. "Daisy Stevens, will you marry me?" Daisy froze completely. Of all the things she expected to happen today, a marriage proposal wasn't one of them. "Are you out of your mind?" was the first thing she managed to say. "We just came out of a meeting that decided the company's future. I'm sweaty, you're sweaty, my hair's a mess. So is that a no?" "Of course it's not a no, you idiot." Daisy pulled him back to his feet. "It's a yes. Obviously, it's a yes. I just thought you'd pick a moment that was, I don't know, more romantic." "There's nothing more romantic than proposing right after we save the company that represents everything we've built together," William said, sliding the ring onto her finger. And it was perfect. Simple, elegant, exactly what she would have chosen. "We're a team, Daisy, at work and in life, and I want that to be official. As long as you understand, I'll still argue with you in meetings. Wouldn't expect anything less. And I'll keep reminding you about that late payment whenever you get too full of yourself. You're never going to let me forget those $5,000, are you?" "Never." Daisy laughed and then kissed him right there in the hallway, no longer caring about professionalism or appearances. They had started as an arrogant boss and a defiant housekeeper, evolved into competitive co-workers, then professional partners, and finally into something much deeper. And now, an engaged couple about to start a new chapter together. The news of their engagement spread through the company faster than gossip in a group chat. By the next morning, the entire office knew, and Daisy could barely make it to her office without being stopped by at least 10 people offering congratulations. Finally, Jennifer hugged her the moment she saw her. "I knew it. I knew since that first lunch you two would end up together." "You and your scary intuition?" Daisy laughed, showing the ring that sparkled on her finger. But thank you for not letting me give up back when he was unbearable. Oh, he's still unbearable. He's just your unbearable now. The following months were a whirlwind of wedding planning, intense work, and the daily realization that balancing personal and professional life was an art that required constant practice. We can't do the wedding in June. I have that management conference, Daisy said during one planning session, flipping through the calendar. And in July I have meetings with international investors, William added. August? Launch of the new development program. September? Quarterly closing. They looked at each other and burst out laughing at the absurdity of it. We're officially workaholics, Daisy declared. We can't even schedule our own wedding without checking the corporate calendar. October, William decided. We'll block out the whole month if we have to. The company can survive without us for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? That's ambitious. Honeymoon, Daisy. It has to be memorable. And so, on a sunny October Saturday, Daisy Stevens and William Porter got married in an elegant yet intimate garden ceremony, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and a few people who had witnessed their unlikely journey from the beginning. Moretti was one of the groomsmen, of course. I never imagined that night at the gala dinner would end in a wedding, he said in his toast, making everyone laugh. But I always knew a good partnership when I saw one. Jennifer was a bridesmaid and cried through the entire ceremony, which made Daisy cry too, which made William emotional, creating a domino effect of tears no one had expected. I remember when you were cleaning the same room where you're now dancing as a company director, said one of Daisy's former co-workers from her cleaning days during the reception. Your story is truly inspiring. I just did what needed to be done, Daisy said honestly. I studied, worked hard, and when opportunity showed up disguised as a crazy proposal from a desperate millionaire, I took it. Hey, I heard that, William said, appearing behind her. Crazy? It was genius, strategic, visionary. It was desperate, Daisy corrected with a smile. But it worked, so I'll give you that credit. The party went on late into the night, filled with emotional speeches, awkward dances, and that kind of genuine joy that only happens when people who truly care come together to celebrate something special. When they finally found themselves alone at the end of the night, exhausted but happy, William pulled Daisy in for one more dance, even though the music had already stopped. So, Mrs. Porter, he said, and Daisy made a face. About that, I'm keeping Stevens professionally. Daisy Stevens Porter personally. I need continuity on my resume. Of course, I wouldn't expect you to change completely for me. Good. Because I won't. But you do get half the last name, so consider yourself lucky. The honeymoon was everything they'd promised. 2 full weeks completely disconnected, traveling without hurry, laughing about silly things, and reminding each other why they had fallen in love in the first place. When they came back, the company was running perfectly. Daisy's team had kept every project on track, proving she had built something truly sustainable and independent of her constant presence. You know what this means? Jennifer said when Daisy mentioned it. You taught us so well that we're no longer dependent on you. That's a sign of exceptional leadership. Or a sign that I'm replaceable, Daisy joked. You'll never be replaceable, but it's freeing not to have to be indispensable. The wisdom in those words stayed with Daisy for years. Porter Enterprises kept growing, but now in a sustainable, people-centered way. Social programs were launched, strategic partnerships were built, and the company became known not just for its financial results, but for its remarkable culture. 3 years after the wedding, Daisy was in her office reviewing proposals when William walked in with that look she knew all too well. He had an idea. No, she said before he could even speak. You don't even know what I'm going to suggest. I know that look. It's your I have an idea that's going to be a lot of work but totally worth it face. So my preemptive answer is no. Just hear me out. William sat on the edge of her desk. What if we start a foundation, focused on giving opportunities to people like you once were? Scholarships, training programs, mentoring. Daisy stopped what she was doing and looked at him. You're serious? Completely. You changed your life by grabbing a single opportunity. Imagine how many people out there just need that same chance. That would be incredible, Daisy said, her throat tightening with emotion. And a lot of work. The best kind of work. And that's how the Stevens Porter Foundation was born, dedicated to finding talent in unexpected places and giving people the tools they needed to shine. Daisy personally interviewed candidates, shared her story, and made it clear that the only requirements were the willingness to learn and the courage to try. "Did you ever clean houses?" a young woman asked during the first group of scholarship recipients. "I did, and there's no shame in that," Daisy replied. "Honest work is always dignified, but if you have bigger dreams, if you've studied and prepared, don't let anyone convince you to stay still. When the chance comes, grab it with both hands." 5 years after that fateful gala dinner that changed everything, Daisy and William were back in the same ballroom, but this time for the Foundation's annual celebration. Dozens of former scholarship recipients were there, many now in important positions at various companies, some even running their own businesses. "Remember that night?" William asked, watching the event unfold. "When you treated me like decorative background and I broke every rule you had?" Daisy smiled. "Hard to forget. Best terrible decision I ever made, and worst brilliant idea I ever agreed to. You think we'll ever stop disagreeing in meetings?" William pulled her closer. "I hope not. It's how we keep things interesting." "Then here's to that," he raised his champagne glass, "to many more years of constructive disagreement. And to continuing to build the impossible together," Daisy toasted. As they looked around at all the success stories they had helped create, both in the company and through the Foundation, Daisy thought about how unpredictable life could be. A few years ago, she had been cleaning houses for $120 a day. Now she was a director, a wife, a mentor, and living proof that opportunities can appear in the most unlikely places. And William, the man who had only wanted a silent companion for one dinner, had found a partner who challenged him constantly, made him better, and loved him exactly as he was, flaws and all. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing her faraway look. "That if someone had told me this story a year ago, I would have said it was way too absurd to be true," Daisy replied. A housekeeper becomes a director, marries the arrogant boss who turned into an amazing man, and together they change how an entire company works. Sounds like the plot of a bad movie. Hey, our story isn't bad, it's inspiring. It's chaotic. Chaotically inspiring. Impossible. Impossibly perfect, William corrected and kissed her right there in the middle of the party, not caring who was watching. And as the music played and people celebrated around them, Daisy Stevens Porter knew with absolute certainty that her story, as unlikely as it was real, true, and completely hers. From temporary housekeeper to director. From silent companion to the voice that changed everything. From clashing enemies to inseparable partners. It was, without a doubt, a story worth telling. And the best part, it was only just beginning. What did you think of Daisy and William's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Rate this story from 0 to 10, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to follow all our stories. You can also watch more inspiring stories by clicking right here on the final screen.
If this journey of resilience and turning pain into power resonated with your heart, please support Healing Stories. Subscribe. Help us build a sanctuary of strength by subscribing to the channel. Share the hope. Give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear this message of recovery and justice. Join the conversation. Your comments and engagement are part of the healing process. Let us know your thoughts below. Your support allows us to continue sharing powerful narratives of overcoming trauma and finding peace. Subscribe to Healing Stories and be part of the change.